Hello everyone, welcome to this video. In today's video we are going to learn how we can work with gRPC in .NET. So we are going to learn what gRPC is all about and how can we use this service in our ASP .NET Core application. So what is the difference between gRPC and REST API? So by the end of the video you'll be able to build a gRPC service using ASP .NET Core. And if you are new to the channel, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that anytime we drop a new video, you may receive a notification. So let's get started. So if you have been following this channel, what we mostly do here is that we build .NET application. We talk about Microsoft Azure and .NET, and it's always a REST API that we have been building. And the goal is that we build and then we use HTTP method to annotate our services that this is what you're supposed to perform if the user want to hit this, do this, do this. So now the concept has been always be like we have a service like this. So we're going to call this service. So this is service in .NET. So this is a service in .NET. So what happened is that we mostly work with service and controller. So if we zoom this bit, you see that this is a service, and we're going to have what we call a controller. So in .NET we say that we have a controller here based on if you are using. So let's say we have controller, and the controller, what the controller is using is that is using HTTP, so HTTP method. So it's using this to help us to fit the REST API standard. And then what the service is doing in .NET whenever we are building API using the REST pattern is that we have our service here. And what the service is doing is that, first of all, the service is trying to, first of all, what we have here, one, is that it has our logics, right? So all our logic is sitting in the service. And then when we come to the controller, we use the HTTP method to annotate what that service is supposed to do. So let's say if we go in here, first of all, here, we can have, first of all, we have post. We have a post. We can have something like get, and then we have put. So this is what we have been doing with .NET in the controller, right? So we have all this method, and how we annotate them in .NET is using HTTP. Here we say that HTTP post or something like that, because the goal is that we want to post, and we are making a request, and this is a REST API standard. So our logic is sitting here. Our logic mostly also connect to the database. So in here we can also go ahead and see that connecting to the database, right? So connecting to database. So connecting to database. So this is the service is connecting to database. So when the request comes in, it goes to the database. So we already know what we do mostly with using the REST standard. And this is a basic illustration or demonstration of how it works. Now, this, if we have another application that want to talk to each other, let's say now this is application one. We're going to add another application which we are going to call payment service, and then we are going to add another application where we call. So first of all, we have this application. What we're going to do is that this is a payment service. Let's say product service, product API, and then we're going to have another one in here. We're going to call it auth API. Now we have this right here, and what is happening is that before you can access payment, a product, you need to be authorized. So now the product is talking to the auth API. And how we do this right now is that we used HTTP client. So basically what we're going to do is that if this want to talk to this in .NET, we make so we say that we make API call, right? So let's say we make API calls. Let's make the calls. So now if I want to talk to this, I can use something like HTTP client to make the API call. So we have a library like HTTP client that you might use to basically make API calls. So that is how we're going to do. We make API calls to the other service. So that is it. So we have application B, and this is how we use. And making an API calls, we have a lot of disadvantage coming in, because we always making an API call and sometimes it's not fast. So if a product wants to verify the user identity, we make a request to the auth API to check if the user exists before we allow this one. And we do that by making an API call using something like we can use it using something like HTTP client. And that is what we do. And this is where gRPC comes in. So gRPC concept is mostly work in microservices. So microservices where we have different applications. So the gRPC mostly don't use the REST API standard. So what is gRPC then? So now let's have this. So we need to go and remove this color right here. Let's use the gRPC. For gRPC, let's use a different color right now. Let's say we want to use this for gRPC. So we have application 1, we have application 2, the same illustration. So we already know that with the REST API standard, what we normally do is to make API call using a HTTP client in .NET. So that is it. But gRPC, now here we basically have application. Let's say we have product service. This is a product service. So we're going to say that this is going to be product API. So that is it. And this is a product API where we basically going to use gRPC to do this. So let's try to make this big, right? Okay. So let's make this big so that you can see. Okay. Okay. So this is a product API, and we're going to use the same format where we have this auth. We have this auth API. So let's do API. Auth API. Okay, so now we have this one, another service, and what happened is that we can push them down. So this is a gRPC. Let's write down gRPC so that we see that this is a gRPC, though this is gRPC, right? So gRPC is something that we are going to look at. So now we have the services where we are using gRPC. So what happened is that gRPC, where we call it gRPC. So let's do the gRPC here. So we say that it's gRPC, and we mostly do it, we write it G, and then we have the RPC. So gRPC. And what this stands for is that it stands for remote procedure. So this stands for remote procedure call. So let's spell the procedure word. So it stands for remote procedure call, and you have the concept of remote. So now let's make this small a bit. Okay, let's make it big, small. Okay, so let's do this and let's do this. So this is a gRPC. Let's change the color right here, and this is gRPC. So gRPC stands for remote procedure call, and what happened is that it's basically high performance and open source framework by Google. So Google made this one another way where services can talk to each other. That is what we are going to learn today. So we have a services that we wanted to talk to each other. It's not services. You can also do what we call JSON transcoding, but it's not what we are going to look at in here, where you can turn your gRPC to become something like REST API. That is not what we are looking at, and it's more fast and efficient as you compare to the gRPC. And this gRPC mostly used in microservices, so that is how it works. So it's used something we call the protocol buffer. So let's write this one down, and we already know that if you want to do the normal one we used to do, which is the when we are building the REST API, we use the HTTP method, but this one does not use that. It's use something we call protocol. So let's write this down: protocol buffers. So it's use something we call protocol buffers. So this is why you'll be using instead of using something like get, put, and everything. So take note of this way: protocol buffers, and that is what we're going to use. So what happened in .NET is that we're going to have something we call proto. So mostly you see something like .proto in the code that we are going to write. So as we move forward, you see something like proto. So this is what you'll be seeing, and this is kind of in .NET. Mostly with C# we say that something like this, and the extension of C# is this, where we say .cs. So we are not using that. We're going to define something we call proto right here, and that one, it's going to build into a C# code, right? Under the hood is going to be a C# code. So we have been talking a lot, and I know that at this point you understand the difference between the gRPC and the REST API. So let's get to the code part, and let's write some code right now, and for you to understand this better, right? So let's get started. To get started, I have my writer here open, and I'm going to say that we are going to create a new solution right here. And what we are going to do is that I'm going to choose a location where I want to put this project on. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go to development from here, and I'm going to go to YouTube, and I'm going to select CliffTech YouTube. So here is where I want to do that, and I'm going to say gRPC. I'm going to call this gRPC product service. So this is going to be the product service where we want to create this. So gRPC product service, and let's go down to advanced. We want to use a controller. Let's choose web, and then in here we want to choose web API, and then we go to advanced, and then see that we want to use controller based instead. So we want to use controller based API instead of this. But you see that what we are doing is wrong, because this is what we use to create REST API, but this one we are creating a gRPC. So I decided to select this so that you understand how we create it. So this time around, we don't select gRPC. We don't select REST API, web API. We go and say we want this to be gRPC. So we go and select gRPC, and this template will give us everything that we want. So let's go ahead and create. We are creating our gRPC service, and this is going to bootstrap our project. So Rider is going to bootstrap our project here. I'm going to bring the project right here, and then you see that we have our program.cs loading right now, and this is different. We are going to learn the structure of how this one works. So this is normal .NET application, but you will see that here we have something we call protos, and here we have something we call services. And that is what we are not seeing controller here. You are only seeing program.cs, which we mostly have in our .NET application. And so what we can see is that we can see that we have this gRPC service that we are trying to register here to the service container right here. So this is amazing. So that is what we need to do, and it's very concise, and we are trying to map the service right here. And this is right now, this is kind of greetings, or we are trying to create a static kind of gRPC service which comes with the templates. So the second one is the proto, which is the most important one right now. And you see that this is how the proto mostly defined. We have a package of greet, because if you want to use all these things, we are going to use this greet here. So we are going to create our own where we structure it based on a product, and we are going to add SQLite so that we have some database to for our persistence or something like that. So we are going to build a very simple CRUD operation with gRPC right here. So this is how it works. You have your gRPC. This is a message. So this is the request. If it is .NET REST API in .NET, this is going to be some kind of your DTO or your construct or something like that, where you have maybe create a user request or update the user request and then create the user response and all these things. That is how you do here, and you create your services here. So what is going to happen is that the services that you're going to create, gRPC would then generate a C# code under the which you are not going to see that, and then use that in your main service. So here, if we go to the service, that's what we are doing. We are bringing in here. So we go to the greeter, and then you see that we have greeter base. So basically, we are accessing this because this has been generated for us, right? So this is it, and then we do the normal .NET stuff. So let's get started, but we are going to use Postman as our client to make a request to gRPC service that we are going to build, and we don't want to try it out yet. We don't want to use the greet. We are going to build our own from scratch, so we understand, and when we get to making a request, then we can use the Postman. So what we're going to do is that very interesting part is that we're going to create some kind of directory in here. So the first one I want to create is modules. So we're going to click on this project, and then we're going to say that in the simple way, we're going to say that add a directory right here. So the directory that we want to add first of all is that we probably want to have data. So we're going to say that this is where we do our database stuff. And then the second one we want to have right here is that we're going to have our model. So we were going to define some models, right? So let's try to have this kind of models right here, and that is it. So we are just building a basic one. So in here in the models, we are going to define something, because as we already do, but before we do that, we need to install some Nugget packages. So we're going to go to where we want to add some Nugget packages to our application right here. So the first one is that we are going to do SQLite. So we are going to use that from Microsoft. So we are going to go ahead and say that Microsoft entity design, entity framework called design, which we need that. So we're going to type this one in here, and then it's going to come in here. So choose the version that the .NET version that you are using. We don't want to choose the version 10 preview or something. The 9.6 works. It depends on the kind of version .NET version you have on your system. So I have the 9.6 which I'm going to use. So let's use that one, and then I'm going to add this to the project, and then we need the SQLite too. So that is what we need. So inside here with the entity framework, what we can do is that we can then hit here SQL. We say that SQL Lite. So this will then put the SQLite here, and then we also going to select the 9.6, and then we just add it to the project. So we install this to the project, and this is done. So now we have the design. So when we go for the design, we have the design added to the project, and then we have the SQLite also join. So the next thing that we want to do is that we're going to go and create our models, and then so that we can connect it to the SQLite and everything. So what we do is that we're going to create a new class. So we're going to create a class here in the models. So I'm going to call it I'm going to call it product, right? So this is, we are not going to ask this again. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and first of all make sure that this has some kind of ID. So we're going to say public GUI ID. I always like GUI ID, so we're going to have GUI ID, and I'm going to have public required. So let's make this one required string right here, and then we're going to say that the product name, and then we're also going to do public. So we're going to do public required. We are also going to have a description, and then we're going to say that public decimal price, so the price of the product, and then let's have a fun of date time, and then we're going to say that the data we created, so date time created, and then public date, another date time, updated, right? So and that is one thing. We're going to also have a public string right here. I'm going to set something like tag, right? So tags, and then first of all I want it to be I'm going to say default, something like this. So this is basically going to be the model that we're going to use to we are going to use to talk to the services. So you see that the namespace is wrong because we have a capital G before the gRPC comes in, but don't worry about the namespace, right? So it's supposed to be gRPC, but let's go ahead. So that is what we have in here. So now we have our model working, and the next thing we want to do is go here and create a DB context, since we are going to use the SQLite. So we're going to create another class here, and it's a DB context. And then inside the DB context, what we do is that here we're going to say that we bring in the DB context from entity framework core, and then here we're going to say that public, we have app DB context, and then we have the option right here. So here we can see that base option, and then we have this in there. And then what we're going to do is that here, this is a normal way of we creating some kind of DB context in .NET. That is what we are doing here. So we say DB set, so DB set, right? We probably want to go and bring the product model that we created. So that is what we need to bring in here, and what we want to do is that we want to give it a name of this, but mostly I prefer if we have this product, we can say that we want to set and then we see that product, and then here we do this. So this is basically going to be our DB test, and then you can see we are getting some warning here that convert this to primary constructor. That is not what we are focusing right now. We just want to create this. So now our model is created, our gRPC is created. Now the concept of proto is what we are going to basically work with. So ignore this warning from right here. Let's go and then create some kind of the proto. So the proto is where we do the magic. So what we are going to do is that we're going to create another proto here. There is already greet proto, so we're going to create another one, and this is one. Don't go and choose a directory or a class. We're going to create a file, and then this file we want to call it products.proto. So product.proto. So if you are using VS Code, you might need to basically coming up with some extension to get this. So these ones are the same. So we're going to copy the namespace or heading, and I'm going to paste it in here. So that is the greet. We're going to go to the greet. So this is when you say we are making this greet. So here we can specify the package. So we're going to say that package, and then we want to make this some kind of product. So let's make this package a package of products. We have this, and then we're going to have service, and then service, we're going to call this service product. So we have this service called product. So the service is where we, after we creating our message and everything, we will do a lot of things with it. So now let's go in here outside the service, and then say that we create a product model. Product model. Let's check this one. Product model used in message. So let's do this. So first of all, I'm going to say message right here, and I say product model. So this is basically how we work with DTOs in .NET. So we're going to use that to create our services, right? So product model, let's check the spellings of model, right? It's wrong. So product model, and that is what we do. So first of all, the whole product model have an ID of this, and I'm going to say that this is going to be 1. So you see how we are using the index to say that this is supposed to be in the position of 1, right? And then we do the rest. So we have string of name, where we now want to post this into 2. So very interesting. And then we're going to have a string right here, and then this is going to be description. So we want to put this into description. So this is going to be description. So description, we put description to 3, and then we have a price. So we're going to do, for now here, let's use double, and we're going to use a trick to make it work with the price. You see, remember in the model, the price was using decimal, and then in here we are using double. So let's put this to 4, and then we have this where we see that created at. So created, and then down here we're going to see at is go to 5. So you see how we are doing the name convention of how this works. And then we're going to see that the same thing. So we do this, we can copy this, come down here, and make sure that this is, so you see that the proto is more of statically type, is very the type save is high, because when we do this, it work as we are doing it in C# and all that. So the proto buffer is what we're going to create, and when you go to here, we were saying that it's use something we call proto buffer, and use what we call proto. So we create a proto file, we do our service, and we create something that we can think of as construct or DTOs, and then when we build the application, it's gonna, the proto is going to build and intend to be .NET or C# service that we can interact with, right? Okay, so let's go back right here, and then in here we probably will say that updated at. So updated at is, let's updated. So updated updated okay, updated at, now let's give it index of 6, and then the last one we need is string of tag. So we have this tag right here, and then we're going to see 7. So this is how we also, this is going to be the base model. So if it is where we are building the REST API, we can see that this is our product response or something like that, right? Okay, so create. Now let's go down here and I say create, let's go fast, create operation. So create operations. So create operations. So this is going to be, so first of all we have a message here, and then what we are doing is that we're going to create, so it's kind of a DTO in .NET. So we're going to say that first of all I have this here where we can say that create product request, create product request. So this is going to help us to create a product, right? So anytime we are creating a product, it's mean that this is the request that we are going to do. But what changed here is where we give it index of where this is supposed to be, right? So that kind of systematic order. So it's the same that we're going to use to create the rest. So we will not waste time on this because it's the same concept where we create the buffers and everything. So we go ahead and then create. So when we create product, you see that create product response. So we're going to have create product response coming in. So create product response, we probably want to do this, and it's the same as that. So when we create product, the response that we want to have when we create product, we want to say that we have some message, success message, and then the data coming in. So but the one thing that I want us to look into is what we are doing in here. So now we have product model right here, and then you will see that we are calling it here, and then we are assigning product to it. So it means that when we create product, the response that comes with all of this. All right, so if it is REST API, the DTOs, we can have a product response. Then we are saying that when we create product, the whole product response supposed to return. But this time around, you're going to add a message to it. We have a message, a boolean, whether it was success or it's the message that shows up. We're going to indicate the message when we are building the service, but return the whole product and then assign it. So when we call this, we should get the whole response, the product model coming in. So that is one thing you can look into about the gRPC, kind of how the proto works. So it's the same as, we're going to say that read operation. So when we want to read the product, right? So read operation, read operations. So read operations, and then in here what I want to do is that I want to have get a product request. So where in the DTOs in .NET, REST API, we say that maybe we pass in an ID or something like that if you want to get a product, one product, right? And if we want to read all products, we can then also use ID. The same at we don't use ID, we just create an endpoint to get all the products. So that is it. But this time around, I have this name here where I say that get product request. So it means that we are going to use ID to do that, and I'm going to do the response in the service. So now we are not working with a service, we are just creating what we can think of as our DTOs. Okay, so get product response. So when we get the product, this is the request. What about the response, right? So we can see that the same response like how we did this one, it is same one that we can do in here, but just that we're going to change the name. This was get product response, and we can see that get product response also. But this one was create product response. So when you create product, the response that comes when the whole operation is successful, right? But when we want to get a single product, what are the response that coming? Is the same thing. The only thing that change is the name. So the name is that get product response, and this one create product response. So now let's go and create the rest. So we are using the same pattern. So I already prepared all the DTOs, and it's the same one, so we don't want it to waste in here. We're gonna go and talk about more of the service. So we're gonna have all the DTOs in here. So I have all the DTOs in here. So we call, the reason why this is a proto file, but I want us to picture this as DTOs, right? So that we can be familiar with it as we have already built REST API. So this is something we can picture of it as DTOs. Okay, so this is how we do it. Update the product, and then when we product is successful, we have a product response. So update the product request is here. So update operation, we have all this thing, and delete operation is also here where we delete. So delete product request, and then we have this. So now these are the DTO. What do we do with it? First of all, we create a service, and this is, so we can say that this is what tend to be C# code, right? So let's say C# code at the end, right? So at the end, this is what is going to be a typical C# service code, right? Let's say service code. Okay, and someone will say that this is not a C# code. It's kind of a C# code, but not C# code, because when you check the extension, this is a proto file, right? But we want to do something here. At the end of the day, it will turn into a C#, typical C# code, right? Yeah, so when we are working with this, you need to be very careful. So for us to do this, create a service, first of all, we need to do what we call the gRPC. So we say RPC, and then here we're going to have something like create product. So we can think of these things too as interface, right? So we can think of this, so we can think of this as interface, where we define some method that interface, some method that we want to implement, right, in the service. So that is one thing we can think of. So let's think of this as an interface where we already have the DTO. So that is what you do in the REST API, where you have the DTOs, and then what happens is that you then create interface with these DTOs, how you create requests to accept and everything. The same concept here, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Product. So we want to create product, and then create product. What do we want to accept? Create product request. So we have create product request. That is one thing that we want to accept. And it says return. So when we create that, we want to return, what do we want to return? We want to return something. So create product request, and then when we are done creating the product, what will happen is that we just returns create product. Let's check this word, the spellings word. So returns create product response, just like this. Now we have a method right here, say create. So interfaces, mostly this is how you do it. So gRPC method of create, and it take in create product request and return create product response. That is the concept we're going to use here. So we have a method creating the product and returning the product for us. Returning the response of this. Okay, so we're going to do the same with the rest. So it's the same approach that we are going to use for the rest. So now this is create. Let's use the same RPC, right? So RPC, we also get product. So we want to create product. So we'll get product, and what we are doing is that we're going to say get product request, and then it returns get product response. So get product response in here, and then we do this. So we first of all also going to do the RPC here, and then we are going to say list product. This is how we want to call the method right here. So list product, and then in here we're going to say list product request, and then it returns. So we want to returns right here, and then we're going to see that this list product response. And then what we do is that we're going to say that gRPC. So we say RPC, and then when we say that update product, and then at update product, take update product request. So update product request, and then in here it returns some kind of update product response. And then the last one is that we have the RPC, where we're going to see that delete product. So delete product is also going to take the delete. So this is taking in delete product request, and then when it's done, we want to returns this delete product response. So this thing that you see here at the end of the day is going to be a C# code which you don't need to understand, right? Because it's gonna take the gRPC, the whole protocol stuff is gonna take place, and then transfer this code into a C# code that we can interact with in our service. So that is what you need to understand. And then they will call this product. The service is called product, the package is called product, right? So that is one thing that we need to, when you check in here, this is greet, and then this is greet or something like that, right? So we can change the service, but it's good. Our proto is nice, so let's go to the proto again. I've closed it. So this is it. So you can see that this is small and this is big, all right? Big, like uppercase. Okay, so now we are done. Let's go to the program.cs and trying to register some kind of our, let's try to register SQLite, and then trying to also register our service. So what we're gonna do is that we're gonna create what we call product service. So let's go to the service right here, and then you see that we need to create a service, and I'm gonna call this a product service. So let's create this product. So this is going to be product service. So let's create this, but now it will not work, because one thing that you need to take note of when you are building this thing is that now if I go here and I want to set product, because the package name was product, right? If I say product, which is this, it's giving me the gRPC module, right? Okay, then when we go in here, we are not getting anything. But you see, even it shouldn't be product, because we have not built this application yet. So we are not going to get anything here. So when we build, we would hit .NET run or .NET build or something like that. That is where the magic is going to take. But before then, let's hit our SQLite. So for this, we're going to do this at the top right here. So we're going to say builder dot service here, and then we're going to see the add DB contest, add DB contest, and then in here what we want to do, we want to add app DB contest, and then in here I want to call and say the option. This is for option, and then I want to say that option like this again. Dot here, we probably will then say that use the SQLite. So they say that use SQL. Okay, use SQLite, right? SQLite, this is it. And what we want to specify is that we want this to go to data. So in here, let's bring the one down here. And then what we're going to do is that this, we probably want to have data something like this, right? gRPC service. The source is going to be like this. So this is going to generate a file, and then it just creates some kind of files for us in SQLite, right? So now we are getting to the fun part. What left is we creating our service, and this gRPC, we don't have any controller. We just work with services here. That is why most of the time you see that people are saying that gRPC service, right? Okay. So what we want to do is that we want to run this application so that we can then work with our services, and then we're going to build succeed, right? So build succeed right here, and everything build, and then this one is running now, right? So now if I close this one right now and I go here and I say product, so product, we should get a product in here. So it's basically the same as when you want to most of the time implement your interface, right? So product, and there is how we name our package, right? So we name it product, and you see product here, it's not product. This is not product, it should be product. And then inside the product, we should have the base. So it means that this is using the models. This shouldn't give us this. So we should get this like what we have done for this grid. And then when you go to the grid service, so when we go to the gRPC service right here and we go to grid, this is not proto, so here let's check. So when we go to the service, and then you see that inside the service we go to the grid one, you see that this is how we're doing it, right? And when we go to this, you see that this was the service that was defined in the so we need to get the same one here. But before we even do that, let's go and perform migration before. So with the migration, we're going to do ls right here, and then we want to cd into this gRPC service that we created. So we copy, we say paste, and then here we're going to say that .NET. But if you also want, right, that make it easy for us to do migration. So we can see that you see entity framework core and see that add migration, and you can go and install this rider thing. It's free, and then if for non-commercial use it's free, you can do that. So we can do that, and it's gonna create migration for us, right? We create a folder called migration. So we hit this, and it's gonna run and create a migration. So it's gonna fail because we are running the application. This, so build succeed. Don't worry about this, and then it's done. So now when we come here, we should see a migration for us. So if you don't want to go to any stress, this one make it easy for you to build this. So if we are done, we can then also go and say that it's a framework call here, and say update database. So this will then trying to connect to the SQLite. So you see, we're not using the .NET, add the migration, everything. We are doing this from the UI, and everything is working. So now we are back to our service, and in here, let's go and build the application again. So now everything is built. Okay. So now the one thing that we need to do is now we need to go and do our service. So as I said, we need to get a product from here. So we don't want it to come in from the model, but we need to make sure that we get it and we use it like how this one was using. So it's the same. So the point is that this concept that we are talking about is the same as when we are building RESTful API or REST API, but let's some of the things change. So here, one thing that we need to also do is that before we can get access to the base code that is being generated from the proto, is that we need to go into our the CS program. So we're gonna go here, it's kind of edit, and then I'm gonna open it here. And then when we open it here, you see that we are trying to register the grid here so that .NET will find this proto file and work with it. So that is one thing. So what we're going to do is that we are also going to copy this. We're going to copy this one. So as I said, it's used what we call the proto buffer, right? That is what .NET will see that, okay, this is a gRPC service that you are using. And then the proto that we want to register is what we call service.proto. This is it. So now .NET will find that proto file, try to generate, work with the gRPC to generate that code for us under the hood for us to use with our service, right? Okay. So now that we have this, let's build the application again. Now .NET is going to do a thing, right? So there is an error that we need to make the path. So it means that we are making a mistake here. Let's check it for proto service. Okay, so this is not service. This should be product, because we don't have any service.proto in there. So let's rebuild the application. Now is running right here. Okay, so now everything is working. So now let's go to the service. So now when we do something like this, we should, and I should get something like product, and in the product here we should get base. So dot product base. And this code, if we are to go to the implementation of this code, right, you see that this is something that has been generated. So we can, if we can push this, so you see that this is something that has been generated from C#, right? And this is what we are going to work with. So what the service we created, this is what C# has generated some kind of a code for us, right? So this is coming from this, and this is our service. So that is So what we are going to do now is that we're going to go into our program.cs, and as I said, what we need to do is that, let's do this again. What we need to do is that you can see that this is being registered already, and for us to register this, we need to also go and say that app.map gRPC. So we need to do map gRPC service, and then what we're going to map here is our product service. This is basically how you register the gRPC service in the application or dependency congestion, the service container in .NET. So we have registered the product service. So when we run application, the .NET will be able to find it and then run it for us. So now let's go and do the magic here, as we already do in mostly .NET application. We bring our DB context here. So private read only, app DB context. So app DB context, right? DB context right here, and then we want to give this name as context, and then we probably want to create a constructor for this. So we go and say that read only, so public product service, and then this is it, and then we create a constructor for this. So that is what we have in here, and then we are saying that this is kind of we doing interface where we are implementing. So for us to get access to our proto file, so you remember that when we go to the, we say that this service is going to product, and then we define this. So this is in the RESTful API, what we can look at this as kind of interface, right? And then for us to get this in the service, you see we have product base, because this is code generated, right? C#, the gRPC has generated that one for us. So now we have access to that one as interface we're going to implement. But now, see, since it's already generated, we need to override them, right? So we do that kind of overload stuff here. So we're going to say that public override, and then async, and then what we want to do is I want to have tasks right here, and then what we are doing is that we're going to say create a product request. So this is, we don't have the namespace. Let's see. Okay, so this is it. We have, let's close this, let's go back and see. So we basically have this public override, and then we are calling this create. So this is coming from our proto file, right? So this is coming from, so you see it's in the class of this, right? It's in the class of this. So this product base where is created, so you can see something that has been created for us, right? So that is the issue. So this is the code generated, and that is what I said, this is something you don't want to look into. And you can see it's gRPC product service, and then it has created that product service for us. So this is code generated from the gRPC, which we can then work with, and it has created all our services for us. You have this product, we have list, we have get product and everything, and I see how it's doing it, global gRPC service, and then it's doing this gRPC exception or that implemented. So this is not something you want to look into, right? Okay, so in here, when we get this, it's very simple. For us to do, I can say that if we are not inputting it, so it's request is got to know. What I want to do is that I want to throw in bad exception. So I want to throw in exception new RC exception. So we want to try gRPC exception and see that system, the status code are coming in. We want to, so if you are not putting in anything. We want to do a status code, and then that status code we say that we're going to say that invalid argument right here, and then we do this, and I'm going to tell you that request cannot be null, right? So that is basically what we are doing. So if the request is this, we throw in new exception, and then so we need to wrap this up. This is wrong. We need to do something like this, and then in here we're going to say that new status, right? So inside the status, where we see that the status code, the status code here is going to be some kind of invalid, right? So we say that this is going to be invalid status code, and then we say that the request cannot be null, right? So basically this is what we want to achieve. So we pass in a new status, the status could be invalid, and then we say that the request cannot be null. And what we are trying to do is that when you are creating a product, and then the context is now you cannot create a product, right? So if that is the case, we just allow you to create a product. So we're going to say var product is going to go to let's say we call this product item. Nice. Let's call this product item, and then it says it's called to new product. So new product, and then when we get a new product, what happens is that here we want to do something like this. So ID, let's see if we get ID in here is going to go to GUI, because whenever we create this, we want to get a new GUI ID, and then we probably want the name to go to this. We want the description to go to the request description. So kind of mapping stuff we mostly do in C#. So we kind of say that price, but here we want to convert this to decimal, because in our model it's decimal, so we cannot trying to compare both of them. It's not going to work. So because in our model it's kind of a double, and then in your proto is double, and then in our model is decimal. So we are mapping it from the model to the proto. We need to convert it to the decimal, and then here created, right? So created is going to go to this is not going to be created. I don't know, is it created or created at? Let's go to the model and check. What do we do? Is it created? Okay, created. So it's created instead, and then this is going to be request dot created, right? No, the created. Now let's instantiate this to datetime now, and then updated that is also going to be there, and then we have the tag, right? So the tag is going to be request dot tag, and this is not tags tag. So that is it. And then when we are done in the database, we go our context, then we go to the product, we add this, we save the changes, and then when we save the changes, what we want to do after saving the changes is that we want to return. So we say that return new create product response. No, this is not what we want. We want create product response, and then create a product response. And what happened is that success here we can set success to true, because at this point it's created. We can set message So let's make sure to do this. And then here we can set message to the product created successful. And then we see that product product is called to new product model, and this is coming from the proto that we created. And then this is what we're gonna have. We have the ID, we have the name, we have description. So this is wrong. We need to make sure, because this was set as a product item. So product item.id, the ID is GUI, so we need to convert this to string, right? Okay, good. So we need to convert this to string, and then we have this product item, the price that is coming in, we need to also convert it again. So anytime that we are fetching the response, we can see that convert. So convert, like what we did right here, we can go and copy this and paste this one right here. So this is basically the price, and then it's saying that price cannot be converted or what? Okay. So okay, this time around let's do, it's not decimal, let's do this to double, because to double, right, not decimal. When you go into the proto, this one, what we have in the database. Okay, so that is it, and we have created. So created is also going to be product item dot created, and we're gonna have this one to let's make it like this, and then we're going to see that this also to string right here, and then inside this let's specify something like O in here. So created is going to have something like that. So the time that we created, we want to convert this to string, right? Okay, so we do this, then we do the same for the update, and then with a tag we can say that the tag is this, but this is shouldn't be tags, just a normal tag, right? So tag is called to product item dot tag, right? Okay, tags. Okay, good. So this is it. Okay, so when we get this, that is how we return this, and then this is saying that convert type, return type. So product, new product model, return new. So we are making a mistake here, which means that, okay, so return new, create a product response, then inside that we have this, and then we have new this, and then this is also saying that it needs to create doesn't match the expected type. So create request, we need to make sure that it match the type that we have in. So we need to make sure we are making a mistake right here, because this should be the product. When we create product, return create product response, not create product request, right? So we're doing create product request here instead of create product response. So now this is how we create the service. So now we have created one service right here, and this is what is happening. You can see this is coming from the proto file. which is being generated, right? So that is it, and we can then put this one down. Now let's go and then do something fast when we want to get product. So we can say that public override async. So what when we want to get a product, we can say task, the same thing. This is no updates, so task. And what we want to do here is that get product response, then it taking get product request, and then we have this. So we can do the same thing. If the request is no, we can throw in exception and say that what we want to do is that the request cannot be null or something like that, right? So we can say that request is null. Okay, that is it. And what we want to do is that we want to also pass, because the ID that the user is going to enter when they want to get a product is kind of a normal ID where we say that it's hint, but what we have here is GUI. So let's pass this to GUI before so that we'll be able to understand this. So pass this request ID to string, right? Request ID. So let's remove this and then do this, right? So we pass this to GUI. I don't know, but what we have in here is that we need to make sure that we have a GUI of product ID. So okay, let's make this as product ID, and then when we get that, if we throw in exception like that, so the ID is invalid, right? Okay, so if it is not that GUI ID that you are trying to pass in, we tell you that the ID is invalid, so you cannot just go and pass in any ID. It will not work, right? So after that, we say that if all this is clear, we can say that product item, but we want to use find sync, not find. So find sync, and then we find the product ID, right? Because we want the user to enter a product ID, and then we find the product ID. And then when we find that if it's null, if product item is null. So let's see how we do this. Let's name this a better name, right? So var product item. So if product item is null, if product item is null, what we want to do is that we want to throw in exception here, right? We want to throw in exception that no product found, right? So we can say that if it is equal to null, we want to, okay, if it's equal to null, and the reason why is that this should be await. That's why we are getting an error here. And then we're going to see that it's null again. If we fetch product and there is no product in the database, we throw in this exception, product not found, right? And if everything is clear, the next thing we want to do is that we return this kind of new product, get product response right here. And this is what we do. So it's the same thing that we have been doing, like how we fetch the other this one. So we probably return a new response with the data, and then we have a successful message, right? So it's the same thing that we're going to do here. So we can copy this, and then we come here, and then we have this, right? So this is a message product which is successful. And then in here, what I can do is I can see that this is created, and then this is also created, and then here we probably have tags, sorry, and then that is it. So let's terminate this. So this is basically we trying to get a product by ID, and then so the rest of the service that left is that we now have create products, and then we have where we get product by ID. So now we doing update and delete, get all products and everything, and then we test this on Postman to see if it's working. So let's go ahead, and then so if this is RESTful API or REST API in .NET, you see that we have an interface that we mostly implement, right? So when we go to the proto, this service that we created here, we have done this level 3 right here. So we are going to work with the rest of them, right? So now let's go ahead right here, and let's go and implement what we call list product, right? So list product is going to follow the same format, where I'm going to say that public override, and the reason why we are using override is because this method is already generated. So we're going to, and then you see that we get some kind of auto suggestion right here, right? You see list. So we want to list this. So this is not what we want, but what is happening right here? Okay, so public override, and we're going to say that list. So list product, which has all of these ones. So now it's been highlighted like this. We don't know what is happening. So you see the usage, it's being used migration service. So let's write this ourselves. So list products is what we are going to look. So public task right here, and you see that for now we're going to say list product response, right? And then you have the list products. And then what we're going to do is that public override async. And then what is going to happen is that first, one thing that we want to also implement here is what we call pagination. So imagine we have a lot of data coming in. It's gRPC service though, but we can implement something wonderful. So I'm going to say that page size. And then the page size is basically going to go to request dot page size. Let's see if we have page size in the request. Okay, page size, and then first of all we probably want to go and see that we probably is if 0 or some kind of 10. Let's make this 10, right? So this is a trick that I'm showing you right here, where inside of your gRPC you can also implement this. And then when we get that, we say var page. It's called to request dot page. And when we get page, so in the response we will show you the page. So let's make this fun. And don't worry about you not getting, you are not seeing anything. We are going to test this. So you see, and we get this, and then we see that even if it's 0, let's make this 1. We don't want the page the Copilot suggestion. So we say 1 or request.page, right? Okay, so we have page 1 and everything. So let's say that get a total count. Right, total count for pagination. Total count for pagination. So let's do this. And then what we see that var count is going to go to this. So this will count it from entity from us. Count sync. Count async. So it counts all the things that we have. And then when it happens like that, what we're going to do is that you see var. So most applications where you see like we have something like page one, total data that we have and everything, right? Pagination is something you can also, so in the best practice where we're going to have a lot of data, but because this is getting all data. So when we get this, we want to go and say var, right, product item list, product, so let's say item, product item list. Let's give it product item list, and then it's going to go to await, and then we go to the context, and then we find the product. So when we do that, we're going to do fun parts here. So when we find product, let's bring this one here. We skip page, and then we want to take the page size. Then when we get this, we do this. So this is going to help us to do the pagination, right? And this is kind of, let's see, page size. So let's make this so page size, page size everywhere. Okay, so okay, so let's see how it happens. Now we have where the pagination, so get total count for pagination. And now let's do the response. So we say var response. Let's put that so this is the same as what we've been doing, but this time around this is going to be kind of a different way, right? So the ones that we have been doing, we mostly map them. So when we check, when the response comes in, we map them like that. And since this is going to be pagination, we can do something wonderful. We can say success message is equal to true, because at this point we have the data being retrieved. Now for the message, we can do something like this. We can say that message is called to product item list in the product received successful or no product, right? So if there is no product, we say that no product. If there is product, we do that. And then in here we're going to say total count. Total count is called to total count right here. So total count is going to be total count, and that is the total count. We probably, this should be total count, right? Let's make this total count. Total count, and then we can use that in here. See that total count. So that is it. And then this is saying that the total count cannot be total count. Okay. So the response has kind of okay. So page total list, this is total count. Where are we doing this double thumbs right here? So this is, we have the the AI is trying to suggest a lot of things which we don't need, right? Okay. So this is the count, and then we find a product. Okay, so here the issue we are facing is that we need to do this await, and now we can then trying to pass this into the total count. Okay, so when we fetch the data, where we see that the total count of the data found in the database is going to be, so we are getting the total count by using this, and then the response we are mapping it to the total count that we're going to get, right? So that is it. So because this is going to be a lot of stuff, we're going to loop the response, right? So we say that convert product to a product model, convert product to product model, and add to response. This is what we want to do. So we loop through, say, for each product item in product item list here, and then we're going to say that response dot product, and then when we get that one, what do? We say add, and then when we add that one, we see that new response model. We don't want to do this. So new response model, and then in here we can do the same thing that we have been doing, right? So we can copy the same thing, and then here is where we do the response. So the same thing. Here we need to make sure, let's make this one item. So the same thing, and let's change this, and let's add tags to it. So get all the products for us. Let's terminate this. Let's terminate this guy. Okay. So that is it. Get this. This is no. So this is going to get all the products, right? There is an issue here. Let's try to fix this issue. So because, okay, we are not doing return, so response, this is a response. Okay, so let's see if we do return response, but still now this is giving us an error here that this method overload is an error. So public override okay. But why is that? So it is not happy with the override. Is that the case? But it should be right. There is no substitute method for override. Oh, interesting. Okay, so that is this right now. The next thing that we want to do is that we want to go and implement something like, now we get all products. So the next thing we want to implement is we go and get update, right? Update product, and then we do delete product, and then we are done. So we're going to go and do public override again. So that is two things left, right? We create update and we create delete. So now we have all these things here where we can create, we get by ID and everything, but this thing that is showing up, there is no, it means that we made a mistake here. Let's go to the profile, the proto, right? So product, the proto, and you can see that this one what we have here is list product, not list products, right? So we can go inside and make sure, let's do this, and it works. Okay, now let's try to list the two things that left. First of all, what we're going to do is that we're going to have a public override, all right, async, and then we have this task thing coming in, update product, and then we have this. So let's try to close this, and then here let's implement public override, and then let's override this and say delete product. Okay, so we say let's add this thing here, and then this is it. Okay, so what is gonna happen when we want to update? First of all, we have to make sure that you are not going to enter some kind of, so if the request is no, we probably not going to allow you to go ahead and create something, right? And then the same thing with the ID. So because updating request taking ID, so we can even go ahead and bring the same method that we did when we're trying to get by ID, where we have to make sure that we pass in, we check the ID to make sure that it's GUI ID before we can allow you to go ahead and then trying to do. So we can copy the paste this, and then when we do this, we say var product. First of all, we find the product, then we say that if the product is null, right? The same thing, if product it's got to null right here, what we want to do is that we want to throw in exception and say no product found, right? But if none of them happen, so then it means that we allow the user to update. So we say update, so we're going to say that product, because when we are getting it, okay, we say product item instead of product. So here I'm going to say product item. We allow the user to update whatever they want to update, right? So this is going to be decimal to decimal. Okay, and then say product item tag. Okay, and then update that, because when you update the product, we say that item dot updated is equal to datetime. Okay, so now this is what we want there when you updating the product, right? Okay, so let's say update the product properties. Okay, so updating the product, so this is coming from the request. So now what we want to do is that when you do that, I'm going to put this to try catch, and the first thing we do from the try is that I'm going to say that await, and then we want to save the changes. So if a certain error happens, it means that we will not allow you to proceed to save the changes, right? And we return the same thing. So we save the changes, right? And then when everything successful, after saving the changes, here we return. So we say that return the response, right? Return the response. Return the new response. Return the new response. So the new response that came in, let's say response. That is what we want to return. So it's the same as that what we have been doing, right? Just this time around, this is going to be like update product response. So all the response that we have been doing, most of them, it depends on what we are doing, right? So this time around, this is going to be update product response. So let's do this. And then we probably want to change this to product item here, right? So product item, product item, and then we do this product item, and then this is not created, and then we do this product item, and then we see that at, and then product items got to, and then in here it's going to be tags, something like this. So this is basically going to, and then the product is going to be like this. So if what happened is that if there is an exception, right? If there is an exception, if maybe due to some reason we're not able to update it and there is an error, we throw that error, right? We say that let's have a proper exception. So we probably want to throw exception and say that system fail, and then with this, with the message, we just want to do this like this, and then we probably want to do this here. So this will give us a proper. So now if there is some reasons and we catch an error, we want this to, those error to show up for us. So now let's move to where we want to delete, right? Okay, so that one too, we can check if the request that the user is trying to put in is null. So if the request here is null, we probably want to throw in an exception. The same thing, right? And tell you that no, you cannot just send anything whilst you need to fill in the request, or you need to type in something. And then here you're going to use the ID. So like what we did in here, we can go and copy that. We want to check for GUI IDs, right? We passed in the ID before, so we can paste this one right here. So if all of them pass, we probably want to go and find the product by the product item. If the product is null, if the product is got to null, so if product item is got to null, we throw exception and tell you that no product found, right? If not, we want to also do another try catch, and then in here inside the try, we go through the database. So we go to the database and then we remove the product ID and we save the changes and then return a new delete response, right? So now this time around, return new delete response, and then what we want to do is that message is called to true. So we say product delete successful. So here we are not returning any data. So let's try to terminate this one right now. And then when exception comes in, we want to catch this exception right here. So I want to go ahead and say that we throw in a new exception and tell you that there is an error, something like that, right? Failed to delete the product, and then so basically this is how we build the service. So we have been building the service. We have registered all the service in the program.cs. So now everything is in place, right? Don't worry about these errors and everything, right? So what we are going to do is that don't worry about the warnings, then no errors, right? We don't have errors, warnings. Yeah, so what we are going to do is that we're going to close all of them, Now this is our gRPC service we don't want. Now with the gRPC, when we go back to our board, we see that service, it can help us to service to talk to each other. Now we have this in our normal REST API. We know that if you want to make a request, we can even have a Swagger or Scalar or maybe something like that to make our API call. But this time around, we are going to use Postman. So Postman is going to serve as a client, because we are not doing service to service communication here. We are just doing client gRPC to client communication. And then in the next video, we are going to talk about transcoding JSON, transcoding, where we can make our gRPC request a RESTful API format, or a RESTful API, right? Or REST API, something like that, right? So now we're going to open a Postman. If you don't have a Postman, you can just go in and do that. And I'm going to say new, right? And then in here, these are the things that you can use, right? So you can do WebSockets and everything. And I'm going to go, I'm interested in gRPC, right? gRPC. And now we have a gRPC here. And one thing that we need to do is that we need to import the proto file, right? So that is one thing we need to do. So we need to go into the coding right here, and then where we pasted our code. So we go here, we go to development, and then we go to here, and then we go to coding. So we go here, and then we're going to find gRPC, and then in here we go in here, and make sure you go to the proto service, right? And then this is what the one that we want to do, product one, right here. So this is the product one. We want to remove all of them, the ones we have, and then we have the product, and then we want to import this one, and then we probably want to the limit exceed, right? To collaborate with your team, you can update an existing schema. We can't find a schema, right? So Postman is telling me to do this, but it's here. You are going to import it as a proto file instead, right? And then in here we're going to say service, product service instead. So if you have a URL, that is what you're gonna, but here we're gonna choose a file where we want to import this, right? So import file, choose a file, and then we need to import it as an API where Postman is not helping us. So let me switch the workspace. Let's see if I use another workspace. Let's see if Postman will help us with this. So now let's go for new gRPC, and then in here let's try to import a file, right? So gRPC service here, let's import this and import this as API, and then collaborate with API limited, right? We need to upgrade this, which is not what we want. So it's basically easy. You're going to select this, and then you're going to use it as gRPC, and then you're going to make calls, right? So that is the same format that you're going to use. So let's hit .NET on in this time. So I have this proto right here, and I can see that the product gRPC. So for you to make calls, you need to import this, and when you have it here, you import it as a API, right? And then so let's do this, and then when you have this, you get all the services that you need, right? So So you get all the services right running. So you get the interfaces that you created, right? So this is how it's going to look like, right? Create, and then when you want to create, you can pass in you see here you have a metadata, but if you want to create, you can do it if you want to get product. So if I invoke this, we need to specify the port that is running, right? So what port is this running? It's running on this port. All right, let's paste this port and see. Then we are getting invalid what? Let's go invalid ID because we have not passed in ID, right? Good. So if you want to get a product is already exists. So this, I've created some products already, right? I've created some products already that we are using here to test. So now if I want to get this by ID, so you select, instead of making an API calls to that one, you do select it from here. So if I want to create an I want to get product by ID, I can go in here and then do this, and then in here I can pass in ID and then pass in ID like this. And now if I do this, I should get, let's go down, I should get a product, right? And then you see that the product is here. So if I want to if I want to update this product by ID, we can go in here, let's go and then put this one down, small, extend this, and then we paste this one. If you want to update this by ID, if you want to update this, so when we go to our code right here and we go to the protos right here, you see that update, this is update, right? And then when you check update request, it taking an ID. So this is how we do it in the request body, right? So here we can paste the response that came in from this one. Let's go and bring this one up. So we can copy this. We can copy this product, this one. We want to update this, right? So we go down like that and then make sure we fix this. And then what I want to update is the tag. So we say updated tag. Right, so updated tag, and then we go and say that update product. So let's duplicate this tab. When we are done, we want to get this by ID. So for now, if we get this by ID right now, if we get this, we want to use the product. Which one are we using here? Okay, product. So this is the product protos that we want to use, and then here we want to get by ID. We go to here and then we do this, and then we say the ID, and then we pass in this ID. When we invoke this, we're gonna get a product. So let's Postman bring this one up. What's happening right here is that we need to, so when we do this, you see we get this product coming in, but we want to update it from here. So now let's hit this request, and then remember when we update, we have update response. So I updated the tag, right? It's an updated tag. So now we have updated tag. So when we go here, we get a by ID. You see now we are getting updated tag. So this is how we do it. And then if you want to create, we can do the same thing, but creating does not take in ID. So we want to create and say that this is created. This was created in here, right? Just like that, random stuff. And then this is created. So you see that this is the title that I gave, the name of the product, right? So if I duplicate this right now and we go to the product, and then we pass in the where this one is working, we pass in there, and then in here we want to get all the product list product. We are getting invalid. Okay, so invalid element, which one? So we are getting, if you want to list product, it's not working. But when we want to list product from here, let's see, is this working? We are getting method is not implemented, it's not supporting. Okay. So let's see this one. So it means that list product work here, right? But it's not working here. Okay. So list products, right? Now we are getting all products from here, and the one we created where we say updated tag, and then this is the total count, right? That we implemented. So Postman was asking me to abrogate, but yours will be easy for you to. The goal is that when you have this gRPC, you can then have to import the proto file where you have, place the proto file, and then you're going to get it here to do all the whatever you want to do. So this is how we work with gRPC and .NET, and thank you for watching. The code is going to be available on GitHub, so you can check the description for the link, and then you can use that one as a reference. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that anytime we upload a new video, you may see notification. Thank you for watching, and thank you for watching Cliff Tech. I'll see you in the next video.